Welcome to the Healing Revolution podcast, where I challenge the status quo of conventional medicine and bring hope to those seeking a more natural path to health. I'm your host, Nicole Finn, functional nutrition counselor, nutritional kinesiology practitioner, and co-owner of Aspire Health and Nutrition here in Southeast Massachusetts, home to our natural health store and holistic clinic. We'll be diving into the power of personalized nutritional therapy programs, lifestyle adjustments, targeted supplementation, and a systems over symptoms approach to healing. This podcast is here to inspire you, educate you, and remind you that there is another way, because true healing doesn't come from covering symptoms, it comes from rebuilding the foundation. Welcome back to the Healing Revolution podcast. Today I'm joined by a very special guest, Andrea Nakayama. Andrea is a functional medicine nutritionist and educator who has led thousands of clients and now teaches even more coaches and clinicians around the world in a revolution reclaiming ownership of both their own and their clients' health. As the host of the 15-Minute Matrix podcast and the founder and former CEO of Functional Nutrition Alliance, Andrea draws on systems biology, mental models, root cause methodology, and the therapeutic partnership to offer long-awaited solutions for the rapidly growing chronic illness epidemic. After losing her young husband to a brain tumor in 2002, she discovered a passion for using food as personalized medicine and is now regularly consulted as the nutrition expert for the toughest clinical cases in the practices of many world-renowned doctors. She trains nearly 4,000 practitioners each year in her methodologies so that they too can become the last stop for their clients and patients, as well as a trusted referral partner for doctors in their area. Welcome, Andrea.
Oh, thank you, Nicole. I'm just thrilled to be with you.
Yeah, thank you so much for being here. I'm really excited.
I'm excited too. And I love always speaking to someone who's taken the mission of root cause resolution forward.
Yeah, and honestly, your story has inspired me, and I think obviously many other people as well. And when I was going to school in college, I was in my last semester, and I was looking at what I wanted to do after, and I knew that I wanted to do something in the realm of whether it was holistic medicine or nutrition. And so there was a couple schools that popped up, and Functional Nutrition Lab was one of them. And I don't know what it was. I don't remember how I heard it, but I remember hearing a little tidbit of your story and how you lost your husband to cancer. And that was a sign for me because my dad died from cancer when I was 9 years old. So I was like, okay, I think this is the one for me.
Yeah, well, I'm sorry to hear of your loss. It does become an inspiration for us, doesn't it?
Yeah, because we just realized that there's so many gaps in healthcare, and we realize
Yes,
now looking back, like there could have been, so there could have been a different path for them. And
yes,
obviously we can't go back. We can just change how we move forward.
yes.
So your passion for personalized medicine was born from the tragedy of discovering your husband, who had a terminal brain tumor when you were just 7 weeks pregnant. Can you take us back to that time? What did you do, and how did it lead to you deciding to go into nutrition full time?
Yeah, so I was 7 weeks pregnant, as you said, and my late husband was diagnosed. And that was really the first time we were kind of catapult into the medical system. And when I talk about the medical system, I'm not here to disparage it. There are plenty of things it does incredibly well. And we were very fortunate to be in the San Francisco Bay Area and be able to go to one of the top brain tumor centers in the country. So I just want to say that care was incredible for doing what I call tier 3, right? It was getting right to the problem. But what I recognized is that there's a whole lot of other things that are impacting the individual. And as it was the first time we were kind of in the system with an actual illness, not a broken arm or a sinus infection, I was recognizing that there were some major gaps in the system. So the first gap that I was exposed to was that the person, my late husband, Isamu, was treated like his diagnosis. He was his diagnosis. We were the glioblastoma and pregnant lady down the hall, right? Like that's who we were. So that was surprising for me that he wasn't the person with the diagnosis. He was the diagnosis. And the other initial gap I encountered was that everybody with the same diagnosis is treated the same. There is a protocol for how to handle that diagnosis. So these were surprising to me because I here he was, somebody very unique to me and to the life we were building. So that was kind of my wake up call. And then I went searching for everything and anything we could do to extend his life. He was given 6 months to live. I was 7 weeks pregnant, so we can do the math. He wasn't expected to see our son born. That wasn't good enough for me. So I started a quest for what else can inform the decisions that we're making. And Nicole, at the time, there wasn't a lot available. The internet wasn't what it is today. This is mid to early 2000. So it was there, but not in the way that it is today. So I was turning to old school authors like Andrew Weil and Michael Lerner, names that might not even mean anything anymore, but I was going to the library and getting physical books and kind of putting ideas together. Oh, refined sugar feeds cell growth. Cancer is a fast growing set of cells in the body. Are we feeding that with cancer? So that kind of was a tripwire for me along a path that ultimately, after Isamu passed 2.5 years later, to going back to school and studying all I could to fill those gaps in healthcare. That was a long answer, but it's an important story, I think, that led me to where I am today.
Yeah, that's amazing. Thank you for sharing that. I think that's one of those like you had mentioned early on, it's that it's true. They sort of treat you like you're just another number. They in my experience, even in the holistic field, it was still, okay, here's your diagnosis, here's the protocol. And so
Correct.
there's no, one size fits all. And I think I remember you saying, it's been a few years since I went through your program, but I remember you saying something along the lines of, you know, there are 80% practitioners, and then there's 20% practitioners. And so there's going to be practitioners that help the majority, the 80%. Then
Yes.
you're going to have that 20% that's still going to need support, and it's going to look
Yes.
totally different.
Yes. And that's true of patients too. There's the 80-20 rule where, maybe 80% of people are going to do well with some lifestyle change that is promoted to the masses. And then there's the 20% who have tried that and it doesn't work for them. And I really am about that 20% of the population. And Nicole, as we age, that 80-20 kind of shifts because we are more susceptible. Our hormones are changing. Our immune systems have been impacted more. So the 80-20, where 80% maybe that protocol works for them and 20 it doesn't, as we age, I think that kind of shifts into the other arena.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And as I had mentioned in your intro, there really is a chronic illness epidemic, and things like cancer are becoming way more prevalent, and they really shouldn't be. And so it's causing a lot of people to question, okay, what is going on? What can we do about it? All these really invasive treatments, are not, I don't think should be the only answer. I think that they can be coupled really well with a nutrition program because that's what really corrects illness and disease.
Yes, and
You know.
nutrition for me is about growth, metabolism, and repair. So it kind of goes beyond just the food we eat or the supplements we take into lifestyle medicine as well. And like you said so beautifully, it's what I would call the yes and. You might need to do that treatment or go through that, but that treatment is also impacting the body, and our dietary and lifestyle recommendations can offset the negative impacts of the treatments that we might need to go through for our medical issues.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree 100%. From your experience with your husband and throughout your research, you noticed that there were obviously gaps in medicine and in functional medicine that were leaving people with chronic illness underserved, as we had mentioned. So can you kind of share a little bit more, like what were those gaps and what's the framework that you began to develop to really address them?
Yeah, so those first two gaps were that people were treated like their diagnosis and that everybody with the same diagnosis is treated the same. And that really started to show up more and more and more for me. And then I realized there were more gaps. There were gaps in care. So we might see our doctor once a year, twice a year. We might see them more often if we're going through something more acute, but there's a lot of time in between when we see our providers. There's gaps in human-centered and whole person understanding. So the fact that different people have different access to making change for a variety of reasons is not part of care. And so I just began to see and accumulate more and more of the gaps that were kind of missing the mark. We weren't landing where we need to land for people to understand what's right for them. At the same time, I think we've gotten really obsessed in more recent years with technology and data and trackers and metrics, and we've lost, or we've created a new gap in self-understanding. We don't know how to tune in anymore because we're constantly tuning out. We're outsourcing all the information about ourselves instead of being able to track what's going on internally based on how we feel. And so more and more gaps helped me to understand, wait a minute, we need to slow this down, and we need systems that help us to think about how to organize our thinking, how to figure out where to start, how to be the best advocates as providers like you and I, but also as patients. Where do I focus my attention when I'm being told and sold so many things? So I have three primary systems that I like to speak into. And, I might think of them as the map, the metaphor, and the method, right? And those help us to think through, how do I think about what's next? And I don't know if you want me to go into any one of those, but happy to talk. Okay.
That's
Yeah. So the map is what you and I know as the functional nutrition matrix. And basically that helps us to organize everything that's going on in our bodies or lives and kind of plot them on a graph or a map. So the way that I think about it most easily is our story, our soup, and our skill. So if we're to start with our signs, symptoms, and diagnoses, that's our soup. Everything in the body is connected, and we're constantly in the flux of, what do I do about my fatigue, or about my, low iron levels, or about the migraines I get, or about the weight gain I'm experiencing. We're constantly in those symptoms. And if we can put them down in a kind of map that helps us to see them visually, we're at least getting them out of us and onto paper. There are two areas that flank that soup where everything is connected, and that's our story and our skill. And our story is the piece that I find is most often overlooked. And as you know, Nicole, in functional medicine and functional nutrition, we call these the antecedents, the triggers, and the mediators, the ATMs. How did I get here? How was I born? What do I know about that experience if I know everything? What's the history that my lineage, my ancestors come from? What's happened in my life, the triggers? For me, we told my story. Being pregnant and having my husband diagnosed with a brain tumor was a huge trigger, and so much after that was a trigger. And then our mediators, antecedents, triggers, mediators, are the things we start to know make us feel better or make us feel worse. Knowing that about myself, I'm a better advocate for myself when I go to providers looking for help with that soup, all the stuff going on. The skills are all the things we do: sleep and relaxation, exercise and movement, nutrition and hydration, stress and resilience, relationships and networks. And we just have to start where we are. And the beauty of what we do, you and I, is we understand how some of those simple things can impact that biology and what's going on in the body. So we're not just saying, hey, buddy, sleep. We're saying, what's going on with sleep? What's happening? What are you experiencing? And we know sleep is impacting the immune system. Sleep is impacting the hormones. Sleep is impacting the microbiome. Sleep is impacting detoxification. And so we're prioritizing that skill as a non-negotiable to help us help the body heal. And oftentimes we're bypassing some of those what we think of as more basic skills in favor of the supplement or the fancy thing. I was just listening to a podcast, Nicole, a more popular in the news podcast about the rise of the use of testosterone in women. And, it makes women feel like they're 30 again with some of their energy stores and libido. But are we supposed to feel like we're 30 again when we're not 30? And what is the risk reward of feeling like you're 30 again when that's not where we are in our bodies or our lives? And so slowing down and not saying, I just want the fix to feel like I did 30 years ago, and instead say, wait, what is feeling great at this age, at this stage, with these situations? Feel like, and how do I tend to that with my skills versus bypassing it for some supposed quick fix. So again, the matrix for me is key because it helps us to understand, hey, there's stuff going on in my body. I get it. There's a lot of things. Everything is connected. But wait a minute, we are all unique. I am different than another person who has the same diagnoses or symptoms that I do. And all things matter. My lunch matters. My sleep matters. If I'm not sleeping because I'm stressed, I can't bypass that with a pill or a pellet or a potion that's going to give me energy because the impact is going to happen anyway. I can't bypass it because it's foundational. So there's one system where, again, the easy way to think about it is the story, the soup, and the skill.
Absolutely. And I think what's so helpful about it is that you see the patterns because,
Yes,
like you said, not everybody is the same. We're all unique.
right.
And so if I could, I tell this to people that come to my orientation class, it's that, you could have 10 people in the room and they could all have allergies, but they don't have a Claritin deficiency, but all of
Right.
them are going to get prescribed Claritin, right?
Yes,
And so
exactly.
for us, we use kinesiology and we put them on the table, we assess their systems, and they're all going to have a totally different program because the root
Yes,
cause is going to be totally different. So the matrix is so helpful because you're seeing both sides and how it contributes to their habit patterns, because habits
yes,
are what would drive everything. And then it kind of feeds what their diagnosis is. And diagnosis is all their symptoms that they're dealing with. And I think you talk a lot about the upstream approach and having to go
yes,
upstream to really identify, okay, here's the gaps in my life, regardless of what somebody else has in their diagnosis, and
yes.
what I can do to fix it. And I just think it's super helpful because I'm visual. So seeing it all laid out like that, it just really helps to understand a person because, again, everybody's so different.
Yes, and that upstream approach that you mentioned helps us to ask, why is this happening, not just what do I do about it. So, if as an example, right now I'm experiencing a heightened level of stress because of things going on in my life, and that stress is impacting my sleep, I can't just bypass it. I have to acknowledge the stress. I have to figure out how to better metabolize the stress and put in some things that help it not impact my sleep. Because once it's impacting my sleep, then that's an upstream factor to issues that are going to impact my blood sugar balance because I'm going to be more tired during the day. I might eat more or eat different kinds of foods. I'm less likely to go lift weights because I'm concerned that I'm too tired to lift heavy weights that I'm trying to do for my bones. Like, we can see upstream stress is leading to a issue with my sleep, and then there's many downstream impacts that will ultimately impact that biological terrain. So if I just ignore it and go for a pill, I'm not actually addressing the upstream, the why. So we can't always get rid of the stress in our lives, but we can figure out how to better process the stress so it's not continuing to be a domino effect.
Exactly. I wish more people got that. It's so true because it's like we stop at that first step and we go to that quick fix. So we go, okay, well, I'm dealing with all these hormone issues, so I'm just going to go get the testosterone shot that's
Right.
marketed so beautifully. And, I'm sure it works for some people, but like you said, it's just a quick fix. And it might not work and you might not feel 30 again. So how can you feel great at the age that you are at? And what can you do to create the beautiful environment in your body and so that way you can kind of restore the function instead of just
Yes.
going right to those quick fixes.
Exactly. Restore and evolve the function. There is, I've been leading a longevity book club, and there's a neurologist named Daniel Levitin, and he talks about, the book is called Successful Aging, and he talks about the changes in memory as we age. Now, not the pathological changes in memory where we might have dementia or some other neurodegenerative disease, but the ones we all experience as we age that we start to call senior moments, right? If a high school or college student forgot their homework, it's not called a senior moment. It's just called forgetting your homework. But we label these things. And in fact, what he shows is that the brain and memory change over time. And I'm bringing that up as an example that our body systems do too, that we don't necessarily want to cover over things to feel like we did when we were 20 or 30, because there may be benefits to feeling 60 or 70, but feeling good at 60 and 70. And that doesn't necessarily mean feeling like we did in our reproductive years. You're likely still in your reproductive years, but it doesn't need to be that that's what good is or was. It can continue to be good as we age if we're not ignoring the things that are actually at the core of feeling good.
Right. And it's not always just that nutrition piece too. It's the mindset. I hear so many times
Huge.
where people like, because I'm such a believer in how you think, you know, creates your physiology or at least has a part in it. There's Joe Dispenza and all these other
Yes.
people, Dr. Carolyn Leaf, who talk about this. It's proved by science.
Yes.
And they share, people will say, oh, my back hurts. So, that's what happens when you get old. And it's like that when you keep telling yourself, oh, I'm getting old. Oh, I'm getting old. So you're just constantly solidifying that belief with every ache and pain that you deal with, every forgotten memory. You're just solidifying that belief that you're supposed to age poorly. And
Yes. And there's another book that we read called The Mindful Body, written by Dr. Ellen Langer. She's a Harvard psychologist, but she's done a tremendous amount of research around the science, like you're talking about, of mindset, how what we believe and what we tell ourselves does inform our cells. And, we know that from the biology of belief. And so just that kind of self-programming can really make a huge difference. And as you know, in my second model, Three Roots, Many Branches, which is the metaphor in the threesome of the different models, really helps us to see that mindset is an epigenetic factor. So by an epigenetic factor, I mean our genes are influenced or tagged in different ways that will tell them whether to express or not. And those factors, as you said, aren't just food. It's food, movement, environment, and mindset. All of those things in their expansive definition influence whether our genes express themselves or not.
yeah, I love it. It's really amazing. It's so true. There's so much, I feel like we could go so deeper on this. I want to circle back to the systems for a moment because I think that's super, I love that topic of systems. I think that the systems not only help us as practitioners really understand a person, but I think that it also helps improve the experience of the client or patient as well.
I do too.
And I think that I love that I love your system with the matrix and the functional timeline as well because you're laying it out in two different ways and you're able to kind of circle back when they come and tell you, oh hey, I forgot to mention this and this I've been dealing with, and you can kind of see back in their history without even doing any other sort of evaluation
Right.
what might be going on with them.
Yes. And that's your astute ability to look at that and see and read between the lines and step out of the quick fix thinking. I think that when providers are stuck in the quick fix, they're looking for what's the thing that's happening and how do I solve for it. And what you are bringing to the table is, let me slow down and see and read between the lines. And when you do that, you allow the people you're serving to do that as well. And that's a gift that you're giving them every time you touch their lives, because they start going, wait, I didn't tell you this. Is that connected to anything? Why would that be connected? And even if you don't know the answer, you get to say, yeah, everything's connected. It's all connected. We are one ecological being that's living in the environment of every sort, and we will be impacted.
That's your what's it called? Like your intro phrase that you say in your podcast, we're all unique, it's all connected.
All things matter.
All things
Everything is
matter.
everything. Yes. Yes.
I love it.
That is my mantra. Everything is connected. We are all unique. All things matter.
Yep, it's so true. It really is. I want to talk to you a little bit about functional lab testing because I think right now, like you had mentioned, there's a lot of hype around the technology of everything that we didn't have 20 or 30 years ago. And so we have the Aura rings, we have the Garmin watches, we have lab testing, we have all these even like biofeedback devices that read the
Yes.
entire body in 30 seconds and tell you everything that's wrong with you.
Yes.
But we know that you take an unconventional approach, and I think you've mentioned that we're kind of over testing in functional medicine, and I totally agree. So can you share more with us about kind of why you believe that?
Yeah, and this is, a definite soapbox for me because it is so prevalent these days that we need to test for all these things. A lot of the functional testing is about clues, not about diagnoses, but we're treating it like it's a diagnostic tool. And then it's giving us a protocol based on what it's telling us. I know that I spoke to somebody recently who said that they did 3 different stool tests in one day with the same stool sample and got 3 completely different sets of results. So what I want to say is a lot of this testing that we're relying on is not evidence-based. And I am not like, the evidence-based person who's like, everything has to have its evidence. I think there's a place for clues and deductive reasoning and correlative thinking in healthcare that we do, maybe not in medicine, but in the realm that is dietary and lifestyle modification. But when we're basing our recommendations on tests that aren't evidence-based, first of all, that cost people a lot of money, that are leading not just providers to find a protocol, but patients to self-diagnose and pathologize something that's going on in their body, which may be different the next day. We're setting up a pattern where we're chasing the wrong information. So I'm just going to give an example because I'm talking very hypothetically. Let's talk about a gut test or a GI test or a stool analysis. It is likely, like I said, going to have different methodologies or even the same methodology, but the lab's going to be different and it's going to give us different results. That person has spent money. They're then going to go chasing a very specific protocol that might be a certain kind of supplements or probiotics that are specific to what was found in that one stool sample, when in fact, we have to take a broader approach. The body is very dynamic. We do need pre, pro, and postbiotics, but the specificity that we might be fed isn't necessarily going to be the right thing for us every day. Maybe it was the right thing for that sample in that moment, but we need a broader approach where we're more dynamic and able to move with the different factors that are impacting us. So again, we are spending money to come up with protocols that may not be a long-term resolution for us. We're over pathologizing. The providers are doing it to us, but we are doing it to ourselves. We're then going back to mindset, walking around with some notion of what's wrong with us when it might have been a marker that was true that day because of a number of different factors. And I don't believe it's leading us to true root cause resolution or optimized health. And so I think we're just using it in the wrong way. Again, I wear my Oura ring, but I look at it as clues. And if it runs out of batteries one day and I didn't charge it and it doesn't tell me how I slept, I'm okay with that. In my youth, the one example I can point to is the scale. People would feel one way in their body and then step on the scale and feel another way based on the number on the scale. So that was a first example of outsourcing versus insourcing. And we're doing that all over the place right now. I wake up feeling rested, but my Oura ring tells me that my readiness score is low. Oh no, I'm not rested, right? So just so many examples I can point to. And it's not that more information is bad or wrong. What I believe is that it's not being used as a clue, it's being used as a determinant. And that's where we're misusing the opportunities that are evolving in the technologies,
You're
in
totally
my opinion.
no, I totally agree. You're totally speaking my language because I mean, lab work isn't standardized. And so you could go to three different providers, whether they're a holistic, your primary care, and then maybe a specialist. They could run all of the same exact tests and they would get three different results because they have three different ranges and they're going to give you three different protocols and they're all going to swear that they're right.
Right.
And in my opinion, like kind of what you shared is to me, that sounds like it's a little bit more being part of the problem in healthcare,
Yes.
not part of the solution.
Yes.
And it's being misused, like you said, as a determinant because it's not, it should be used for context clues. It's great for context clues to tell
Yes.
what might be going on in the body. And that's where us as a practitioner have to go upstream. But I think they're using it and they're saying, oh, your blood count is this and your hormones are this. So we're going to put you on this protocol. And
Yes.
suddenly you're $10,000 in lab work and supplements and you're more stressed out than you were. So you look at that skill section and you're not sleeping and you have
Right.
stress. Well, now we're adding to it because we're adding to the financial stress of it all.
Yes.
And
Exactly.
so I totally agree with you.
And I think going back to what we were talking about earlier in the mindset, so even if we're looking at serum labs, and what you know from my training is we tend to look at trends. So when we're having our blood drawn and we're looking at something that isn't a pathological diagnosis, meaning it's just got a little H or L, we want to look at that over time, not just in one particular lab draw. But Ellen Langer, that author I was talking about, who wrote the book, The Mindful Body, and talked about those beliefs and that mindset, she did some research around our hemoglobin A1C, so our blood sugar markers, and saw that the differences in the long-term effects between people who got a 5.6 or a 5.7. Now, any endocrinologist will tell you there's nothing different between a 5.6 and a 5.7. And in fact, the next day, those two people could be reversed. There's no difference, even though one got an H and the other one didn't. So the one that got an H for high is labeled pre-diabetic. And those people who got the 5.7, the H, the high, and were labeled pre-diabetic had more of a propensity to get or develop diabetes than those who had a 5.6, even though there's virtually no difference between the two numbers and they could have been reversed the next day. So what's happening there that makes that different? Well, one person received a diagnosis and the other person didn't. So one person's not experiencing an issue and they continue living their life. Maybe they got a little like, hey, this is verging here. Okay. The other person feels like they're kind of doomed. So even if they try, they may try really hard with a tight, restricted protocol, but then they're not able to stick to it. And then they fall off of that wagon of keeping to the tightness. And so then they actually train their body through training their mind that they are destined or predestined for this diagnosis. So just looking even at a serum lab marker like that and how that can make such a difference, and then how we're using all these other tests and trackers to tell ourselves something about our bodies that isn't diagnostic, it's not pathological, it is a clue. This is how my body metabolizes hormones. This is how my body, rests and gains restoration. This is what my microbiome was like today with that particular poop. We are over pathologizing. And as a result, like you said, we're not getting to health restoration.
Right. And because I think just the general population, they don't know how to put two and two together and kind of connect the dots. And so they hear pre-diabetes, they think, oh no, I'm dying. I'm gonna have a stroke.
Right,
I'm gonna be overweight. Like they hear all these things in their mind of what we've been taught, but they don't have a solution for them.
right,
Usually like a medication, and it's not like looking, okay, so did you happen to go out this weekend and have some
right.
cocktails with some friends? Because that'll throw off your blood sugar. Like
Yes.
they just and so I think it creates a lot of fear. And so I always tell people white coat syndrome is very, I know that's about blood pressure, but I know it's
Yes.
common, but I don't think it's normal. And I think, the goal is to be part of the solution and not part of the
Yes.
problem.
Yes. Well said.
So shifting gears a little bit, I want to talk about you personally as a practitioner and sort of, can you share with us what you have learned through your own journey as a practitioner that you wish more people understood about true healing?
Yeah, I mean, I think the thing that really emerged from me over the years, seeing clients and patients, working with other providers, training other providers, is that we've lost the story. We lost the person along the way. It used to be when I started that it was very skills focused. If I think about the matrix again, what do I do? How should I eat? What's good or bad? Good fats, bad fats. Eat veggies, don't eat veggies. Eat meat, don't eat meat. It was very, very skills focused. We then went into a world that we still live in now that's very soup focused. Is it my methylation or my mitochondria or my microbiome, or am I experiencing histamines or mast cells, or like we're so focused on what's going on in my body and what do I do about it. And through all that, I just started to realize that like that story part of the matrix, the human was getting lost in all of it. And so I went on a quest to figure out, how do I learn more about training the patient and the practitioner about the human element of care. And that's led me to the study and practice of narrative medicine, where we really slow down to hear and listen and tune in to the stories that are being told to us, because there are a lot of clues there that are being overridden while we focus on the mitochondria and the supplements that you're taking. And so I think the biggest lesson for me was that we're missing it's right. It brings me full circle, Nicole, right back where I started. The person is missing when we label them as their diagnosis. My late husband, Isamu, was missing in how I was watching him being treated. And I think it just brought me right back to, wait a minute, there is so much that is here in the healing journey that is just about being heard and seen, and somebody being able to put those pieces together with you to not be your God on the journey, but be your guide. And I really believe that story is the key to our self health healing as well. That when we slow down and listen and notice the things within, that we have a lot more compassion for ourselves, and that compassion leads to deeper healing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think more than anything, when it comes to functional medicine as a whole, in my experience anyways, I find that it's everybody's last resort. So they've
Yes,
gone the route of trying the quick fixes and their doctor
totally.
answers. And so as you know, it's like, they come to us all beaten and battered and they're really
Yes,
sad and they're kind of overwhelmed and they've been told, like you had said, these diagnoses, so because of one point or whatever. And so they come all freaked out and they're like, you're gonna have a field day with me. I don't know if you had gotten that a lot when you were working with clients.
totally.
And I'm like, it's really not as bad as you guys as you think. I'm like, what is going on? And I think just holding that space for people so that they feel seen and heard and just that they matter. I feel like that's more than anything is that they just want to feel like they matter, that their story is real, um, and that they're getting the care that that they need and that they're looking for. They want somebody to listen to them and to yeah, they want somebody to listen to them.
Yeah, and to be able to hold the broader picture. And I think that one of the things I realized when I was working on with a case study group for my book is that there were a lot of people who were nervous about running even their serum labs because they were so freaked out by what was wrong with them or going to be wrong with them. And so I kind of realized I had to flip the script and show them what was working in their body and really tell a different story because people are feeling really fearful that they're broken and can't be fixed. And that's just not true. If they are speaking to us, they are coming to us. If you're listening right now, your body is more functional than it is not. And that should be celebrated. And the fact that your body is more functional than not means it can heal because it is working for you. We are incredibly resilient beings that are meant to go through stress. Stress isn't only bad if we can metabolize it. It's called hormesis, and it's part of how we survive and thrive. So I think just that reminder for folks that we're actually in better shape, like you said, than we think we are. And that's what's going to take us to the next place.
100%. And I think too, it never takes as long to get well and stay well as it did to get ill and stay ill. Reversing
Yes,
that flow is always so much faster. It's not as fast as we would like it to be because we're looking at the
correct.
underlying causes, but it's still way easier than, because cancer doesn't just happen overnight. Diabetes doesn't just happen overnight. So
Yes.
reversing that flow is always way faster. So I think, that's also optimistic for people to.
Yes. I love the optimism. Yes,
There's
yes.
not enough of it in healthcare, I don't think.
True. Truth.
So what would you say there, because there's so much, we've talked a lot about, the quick fixes and stuff like that, but what would you say are some common myths about nutrition or holistic health that you find yourself debunking most often with both clients and clinicians that you work with? Because again, there's just so many trends that people are hopping on right now, and I think a lot of it has to do with really good marketing.
Yes, it is such good marketing. And it also is like who's telling the story, right? I think about this with hormones. Like, wait a minute, not that I'm anti bioidentical hormone therapy. I am in the right situations and for the right reasons and with the right results, which I don't think is what's happening. But whose story is this? Is it marketing? Is it male? Is it like, where is this coming from? And I just want us to be asking the question. I'm not pointing a finger. But when it comes to health myths, I've been in the field of nutrition long enough now that I've seen the different cycles. And so I do not subscribe to any one dietary theory. no, like more protein, you need to count your macros. Oh, it's more fat. Don't eat grains. Do this. Like it doesn't fall in that arena for me. So usually the myth busting is around whatever the trend is at the moment. And I've lived through many. Right now it's high protein, right? And we have to remember that not every body processes proteins the same way. And so what's one person's, golden egg could be another person's poison for a lot of different reasons. And so we need to slow that down. So for me, it's that the dietary theory is what we're supposed to adhere to. And whether that's intermittent fasting or, again, right now it's high protein. I've lived through high fat. I've lived through low fat. I've lived through the vegan. Like I've watched it all
Now it's
happen.
carnivore.
Now it's what?
Carnivore.
Carnivore, because it's high protein, right? Like, so just getting all that protein in, and protein is good. I want protein, fat, and fiber, as you know, at every meal or snack. However, counting our protein, really forcing the protein isn't beneficial for everybody. So just protein, fat, fiber at every meal or snack, no counting is where I'd rather redirect people. And then, knowing your yes, no, maybe list, as I call it, what works for you, what doesn't. And sometimes when people hear that, they're like, what do you mean what works for me and what doesn't? I never feel good, but it's not my food. It's like, okay, let's slow that journey down. On the other end of the spectrum, there's the people who have really started to control everything they feel with what they eat, and they're not doing the inner healing or work to receive the variety of foods. So again, my three principles around food, because to answer your question, I do not subscribe to any one dietary theory, are fat, fiber, protein at every meal or snack. Eat the rainbow, so eat our plant foods. Know we're getting a lot of fiber in that way, and know your yes, no, maybe list. But if you find yourself seduced by what's in the media or the marketing, stop, pause. What is it you're trying to achieve with that modality? What is it you're seeking or looking for? Why do you think that's it? And where can you make a first step towards that that's broader, not so narrow?
I think that's so important. I love that because you're kind of redirecting the question of, okay, you want to do, well, you want to follow this health trend, but you're asking the deeper questions to get them thinking. Because I don't think,
Yes.
well, we don't think we're taught to think. We're kind of, we hear the trend and we hear the three bullets that are like low energy, bad hormones, and whatever else. And so we think, okay, well, that's me, and I
Yes.
need to try that wonderful product. And so it's awesome to ask, why do you think that's it? Why is that
Yes.
the answer for you? Because we're not taught to really ask those deeper questions.
Yeah, and I get it all the time from friends and family who will text me and be like, do you think I need this supplement? And I have to ask, tell me why you think you need that supplement. And they, like you said, reiterate the bullet points that were on the marketing. And I have to remind them of the other things. Are you still doing XYZ? You're already addressing that. But we are constantly marketed to, and there's more and more feeding into our fears of being broken. And that's a lot of what's happening.
I know there has to be like a whole other section of holistic health where we can just talk to the positive of it all
Yes.
and just encourage and empower people. I think that, in my opinion, that's one missing piece or one missing link in holistic health that we could just really hone in on for people.
I love that. And I think that, one of the things I always like to look at is um, we live in a information age where there's more and more information and access to us. And yet, like we started, we're seeing more and more people who are sick and not getting better. So if that's the reality and we have more available to us for self-management, but we're seeing that people are sicker and not getting better. There's a mismatch between what we're being fed and how it's impacting us. So we just need to say, like, let's stop banging our heads against a wall. Maybe it's simpler than this. And positivity, I think, is a piece of that equation.
Yeah, absolutely. Quickly, I just want to share with you something that I think I've been telling people since I heard it from you is all information is true but partial. I
Yes,
share that with just about everybody that comes in because, they hear about this YouTube video or this study or this report, and all that information is true for whoever was a part of that, but it doesn't necessarily mean it'll be true for you. And I love
correct.
that.
Yes, love that. Everything is true but partial.
Exactly. I love it. And it changed the game for a lot of people. They're like, oh, I never thought of it that way.
Yeah, good. I love it.
When you were working with clients, what was one of the most powerful transformations that you've witnessed in someone's health once they shifted to that root cause approach?
Yeah, I think I have so many stories, and, not easy journeys because I was working with people who had complex health issues. But I think one of my favorite stories is a client you've probably heard me talk about who was in her 30s when she was diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, so autoimmune neurological condition. She had been a gymnast and a lawyer in her youth. She wasn't working anymore. She couldn't work out anymore. She wasn't feeling right in her body. And we really had to slowly unpack things over years. We really started to shift her diet, look at deficiencies, work on what was happening for her, and got to the point where she really felt like herself again in her body. She started running. She was doing, bar classes pretty regularly. She felt like herself. And at a certain point, her neurologist couldn't diagnose it as MS any longer. So the diagnosis of MS is a constellation of symptoms and tests. There's not one test for it. So we had gotten her off of her medication, and I'm not saying that's always a goal, but as we were going through our journey, I was starting to see the trend of when she took her medication, which was once a month, how things got really bad for the time after, and then we would be in recovery, and then it would be time for the medication again. So we got a lot in place to the point where we could question the medication. He recognized, the neurologist, that she could go off of the medication. And then we continued on from there. And at a certain point, like I said, he couldn't even label it as MS any longer. There did come a point where there were lesions, which are one of the constellation of factors in her brain again, which led him back to the diagnosis. But at that point, she trusted her body a lot more. And it wasn't my job to make a decision for her. It was my job to support she and her husband's decision to go the next direction. But she chose to take a more holistic approach to managing the lesions and watching them and trying to avoid the medication, which she knew took her further away from her full life. And so I think that was a really remarkable situation because we traveled a long way together. It wasn't like, here's your protocol to deal with MS. It was very individual and unique, and we were building and building and building different habits and routines and practices that led her over time to the initial dissolution of the diagnosis and then a manageable state with that diagnosis.
That's awesome. That's amazing. It sounds like it was not only like a physical transformation, but also an internal one as well.
Huge. And, she was such a, I don't like the word compliant, but she was so driven and she would do anything. And we could like see what's the change that we're seeing and have all the different feedback loops. And, when I stopped seeing clients, it was hard to dismiss the people like that I had just had this long relationship with, where we were checking in and altering as we needed to. And just such a beautiful journey to be on with an individual where we could really partner in the evolution of her care.
Wow, that's awesome. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
I have one more question for you.
Yes.
Where do you see the field of functional and holistic nutrition heading in the next few years, and what changes do you hope to see in how people approach their health?
Well, I feel we're in a funny time, maybe a transition moment for the field where I think it's come to mean a lot of different things. But I see opportunities in health tech for the more human-centered care. So I'm hopeful that we can bring the human element into informing the technologies in ways that help people to be better advocates for themselves, that come from that more grounded, self-aware place. So that is my hope, and where I hope to put even more of my attention.
Yeah, oh, I love that. Thank you for this wonderful conversation, Andrea. This has been really exciting for me, and it's been a huge full circle moment as well. So thank you for your time, and thank you for being a part of the healing revolution.
Yeah, thank you, Nicole. What a treat to spend time with you and see all you've done with the thinking and the work. I'm so proud if I'm allowed to be, and I'm thrilled to spend the time with you.